Bang.
Bang.
Back
Here we
in
go.
Puerto Rico, Pete.
All right. He's back, baby. He's got that lobster behind him or whatever the hell that thing is.
That's not a lobster. When have you ever seen a lobster with tentacles?
Oh, it's an octopus. That's right. All
Yes.
Now I'm hungry for calamari.
Well, I can't help you there, Pete. Folks, you are tuned in to the Rebel's Edge. Thanks for joining us, as always. We appreciate it, and we certainly appreciate the great hospitality the folks at the NASDAQ gave us, because that was fabulous, Pete. They were just great hosts, and we're going to be doing a lot more with them. So, again, thank you, guys. That was wonderful.
We got a little spoiled with those cameras and everything there. I mean, you're working off of a computer of some sort. I am, and these cameras are fine, and even the extended cameras are fine. They're nothing like those NASDAQ. That was awesome. The video there, the audio, absolutely first class. Those people are great over at the NASDAQ, and thank them. I missed the whole thing because of friggin' weather and getting pushed all over the place, but nonetheless, it was fun to watch the Rebel's Edge.
It was, and fun to do it. All right, Pete, let's dive into the macro minute. Today's macro minute, folks, we're going to look at, we've got an 8-day winning streak. This is 8, folks. This is 3, that's 8, that's 2, that's 7. When you lay it sideways, you basically add 5 to it. That's the way it works. But anyway, so the Dow 30, Pete, up 113 points. I'm going to say that the macro minute is everything's going okay at the start of earnings. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think we're coming out of the gates really hot. You got JP Morgan, who really kind of led things off and did a nice job. And thanks to Jamie Dimon, always seems to do an amazing job.
Thanks, Jamie.
But it's been others as well, John. I mean, it's not just been even just the financials, although it is good to see the financials and energy and some of these areas kind of at the same time actually moving to the upside. And that's kind of what we've seen. It hasn't just been one sector that's driving the entire thing like technology or whatever. So that was big. I'll give you a quick macro minute for me. The 10-year. The 10-year was at 4 not long ago. Started off in July. We were above 4. Then we started to pull back. We pulled back a little bit more. And last I looked, we were about 3.76. So we've fallen dramatically from those levels over 4. And I think that's part of why we're seeing the markets move to the upside.
3.75 now, Pete.
Oof. Wow. Yep, getting a hit.
All right, let's talk about futures. You sort of led us into that, Pete, with fantastic futures. Fantastic futures. Well, the fantastic future story on my side, Pete, I'm going back to those oats because they're up another 3.5% today. Doesn't matter if you're feeding the oats to some animal or to your animal kids. But, these are foodstuffs and they're up big this year, Pete. And so another 3.5% is not what the consumer needs. Well,
and the other thing that the consumer might not be all that excited about, John, is, and we've been watching the price of crude, but we were not too terribly long ago around 68, 69. We jumped up to 77. We pulled back a little bit. And now where are we? Well, we're getting back up there towards 76, 77. So the price of crude has been on a move to the upside, which also means the price at the pump will probably start to slide up pretty fast as well, John. They always seem to move a little bit faster on that move up for crude than on the move down as far as the prices at the pump. But that will be something that'll have some effects. And that's why one of the reasons why potentially I think energy could be something very interesting to watch for the second half if we get a breakout. We still got to get a breakout. We've had a break up to 77. I think a breakout to me would be something in the mid 80s.
Well, and we might get there, Pete. I mean, we keep pushing. We're going to see 76 again pretty quick, it seems.
Yep.
So we'll keep our eye on that future, folks. Let's talk, Pete, about Carvana, because this is one that, knock on wood, we nailed it on the way down, or at least the team did over at Market Rebellion, and you and I coattailed on some of those nice trades. Now it's been screaming to the upside, but it was down 11% last night because people were wondering, why are they moving their earnings? Because they moved them from August, folks. They pulled them forward to today, but it was for good reason, Pete. They're going to retire some debt. The stock reverses and goes up huge.
It's unbelievable, really, John. I mean, we started off the year, Carvana was $5. I mean, think about that. And then you start to have that big run up towards 40 year to date, right? Now it's 57, but in the last month, we went from 23 to 40. In the last day, we've gone from 40, which is a huge move off of 5, up to 57. We pulled back a little bit from that. John, when you've got 40% short interest or somewhere in that ballpark, either higher or lower, you're going to see moves like this. We had 2 times normal volume in the first 90 minutes of the day. It was something north of 6 million plus or whatever it was. It's an amazing move for Carvana. I still think when you look at the company itself, is it a great company? I don't necessarily think so, but I will say this. They have a big short, and that short is there to be squeezed, and those guys are feeling the squeeze right now.
Yeah, it's pretty painful. And Pete's already up over 88 million shares right now.
64, I think, before. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, this is just percolating higher and higher and higher. All right, let's talk some more stocks, Pete. So overall, we'd say this one can kind of extend a little bit still. Schwab, I don't know if they can extend, but Schwab was up. JP Morgan made them a focus stock and set a $95 target on them, despite the fact that it's a 60 some odd dollar stock. So they see a lot of upside, Pete.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, John, because JP Morgan, if you go all the way back to the start of the year, it was an $83 stock. Then it plummeted during that regional financial issue that we were going through. If you want to call it a crisis, I guess it probably was to some degree. But nonetheless, it was in the 50s. It got kind of trapped for a little while, John, in an area between, call it 48 and 60. Starting to break out a little bit. And it's had some very violent moves to the upside. I'm not sure exactly where it's trading right now, 67, something like that. But I think that the important part is they've got this, JP Morgan's got a 95 price target. That's not that out of the possibility, given where we started the year. And if they can return, John, everything back to those levels where they were, I could see this stock potentially getting up to that level towards the end of the year. I don't think that happens immediately. I don't think it happens anytime in the next month or two, but maybe in the next 4 or 5 months, we could see this stock maybe at least test the year-to-date starting point at $83 for sure.
Well, it's been a great run for them, and if you were brave enough to step in and buy it and hold it, congratulations to you.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about RXRX. We talked about this one, Pete, because Recursion Pharmaceutical just had a big moonshot recently. Up over 87% in 2 days. And the reason for that was AI. Pete says, I got one word for you, AI. No, that's actually 2 words, Pete.
Well, it's 2 letters.
It's 2 letters. That's true. It's an abbreviation for artificial intelligence. And they're applying that artificial intelligence to some of their pharmaceutical work, Pete. And whoever is putting together these AI ETFs must be in here just buying the living stuff out of this, Pete, because it's up another 15% today. There's just not enough shares for all the demand there is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they already had that bump up, as you mentioned, not too terribly long ago when NVIDIA was a part of this whole deal, private investment, all the rest of it, pushed it up a little bit, and stock was trading around $10. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, it starts moving up a little bit more. And now today, we're approaching $16. It hit new 52-week highs. I didn't see it in the last couple of minutes or so, John. For all I know, it's even up and over 16. But new 52-week highs for this name. Big short interest again. We talk about it a lot. We talk about it for the right reasons, because I think a lot of what's driving this market in some specific spaces for sure, John, are when we are looking at, hey, if you've got 8 to 10%, that's a pretty good size short. You start getting 15 to 20%, that's pretty daggone big. You get 35, 40, 50% short. Those are the monster moves. That's why you see moves like we're seeing in Carvana and in this RXRX, because when you've got shorts like that and the squeeze starts to come into play off of any kind of good news, forget about everything else. That's an excuse for people to say, you know what, I'm in, I want in, and I'm going to try to ride this thing up. A lot like we did at the beginning of the whole pandemic, right, John? When we looked at the AMCs of the world and everybody, the meme stocks, all this kind of stuff, it was a lot of short squeezes. We have a lot more now than we did then. This is incredible.
Yeah. Well, now, Pete, I got to talk about one that's going down hard.
Yeah.
JOBY. This is that electric vertical lift, call them taxis or whatever you like, Pete. But they're getting some of the approvals that they need for their permits from the FAA. So it looked very bullish, and knock on wood, we had unusual activity. We told everybody on Rebel's Edge about it, and it just exploded to the upside. Well, now you've got people getting a little cautious on it because of this huge move it's made. JP Morgan just downgraded them, and the stock was down double digits, 10%, 12%. Now it's down 17%.
I'm going to shock you with this, John. It's another one of these that's got a pretty good short interest in front of it, and I think that's part of the drive to the upside. It's also part of JP Morgan. They're on the negative side of this. They had a price target of 6. They moved it down to 5. They went to an underweight. They really did pressure the stock to the downside, and that's what we're seeing today, about a 12% move. The cash burn here is huge. I will say that, relative to what they've got in the rest of the fundamentals of this company. So they got a cash burn of a little over $200 million. It's a pretty good sized number. So there are some issues that they've got, despite the fact that the FAA gave them the opportunity to go forward. But this is one, John, unless you're in the options, I don't think this is one that you're going to want to. Most people wouldn't have the stomach, I should say, to be able to track this name the way it's gone up. It's come back, the movements that we are seeing right now, and they are monstrous moves.
They sure are.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Pete? I want to talk sports because there's actually some real breaking news that includes one of your teams, because Tennessee Titans, obviously with Henry, you know, they have one of the most feared backs in all of football. But you don't just want to talk about running backs, do you?
No, I think the fact that these guys pulled the trigger, John, and I think they did it for all the right reasons. You just brought up Derrick Henry. That's the reason right there. You've got arguably the most aggressive, biggest, strongest, and pretty daggone fast on top of all the rest of that running backs in the NFL, right? So you've got yourselves a running game. But what do you do in the passing game? You got a lot of receivers, but not a lot of receivers anymore that are those top-tier receivers until now. And all of a sudden you go into free agency. Well, it looks like Hopkins is there. 12 million bucks, Johnny. Could go up to 15 million, given some of the numbers that he could hit. So I think that's a strong possibility. They're going to maybe pay 15 million. 31 years old. He's still young enough. I'm not worried about this guy by age. I think he's still an amazing talent. A lot of years in Houston, went out there to Arizona, didn't work, didn't have the right quarterback. I think Tannehill is going to absolutely love to have this guy as a receiver, John. He's got great tight ends. He's got some good receivers. Now I think he's got a great receiver. And when you're starting off at the running game and Derrick Henry's getting the ball, and as you know, as a linebacker, when you've got linebackers having to come up close and be aware of the potential of him having the ball, not that he's got it, but even the potential, you got to step forward. What does that do? It opens up the defense behind him. That's where Hopkins, who's a very big receiver, he's almost like a tight end. I mean, obviously he doesn't have the same kind of weight, but he's a big, strong guy who can catch across the middle. He's not afraid to go across the middle. I think that opens things up for him to have maybe a really big year, and maybe one of his biggest years, because they're not going to want to throw the ball every time. But when they do throw the ball, who are they going to throw it to? Probably a tight end or two, or Hopkins coming across the middle.
Yeah, and you and I talk about this a lot, Pete. When you've got light linebackers that are fast, they're built basically to cover the pass. And when you've got big thumping linebackers, well, they're built to stop the run. And ideally, you'd want a little bit of each, but teams end up going one direction or the other based on the D coordinator. Now, if you've got DeAndre Hopkins there, and he was suspended for 6 games last year for performance-enhancing drugs, tested positive, I guess, for it. Well, he still would have led the Tennessee Titans in receiving. Yeah. How about that? Sitting out 6 games. So it shows you how right Pete is. And as much as he is going to like, and Tannehill's going to like having him there, Pete, like you said, those tight ends and the other wide receivers, he's a guy that needs double coverage frequently. Mm-hmm. And because he's big and strong, like you say, because if you're a little safety or corner and you hit this guy, you can bounce off him. A lot of guys do. And he's big and strong enough to run through tackles. So a lot of times you want two people on that side of the field, and that's got to open up stuff on the other side. So I think this was a great pickup by them.
Yeah, Vrabel, I think, has done a great job as the coach there. They slipped a little last year, but that's for the right reasons. They did have some injuries. They did have some things that slowed them down.
Derrick Henry was injured. Yeah.
Right. And I think, John, if you get together and you start to put together the team, and the defense has to step up a little bit more, you put together a team, though, that can compete in the AFC South and maybe in the entire AFC, I'll tell you what, it gets pretty interesting. Right now you got Jacksonville, who last year was the winner of that division. I'll tell you what, I think Tennessee is going to be right there with them this year. Tennessee is a little bit older group of guys. And then you look down at Jacksonville, a bunch of young guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's some really good football coming out of specifically the AFC for sure this year. I mean, they are dominant. But I would say in the South, these are two teams that people should keep an eye on for sure. John, I know we talk about Ohtani every day, and I hope you don't get tired of me doing it.
Nope,
because
I don't.
The reason I bring it up, this guy is a living legend, and we get to watch him. And, and I brought this up before, I used to say, well, he's kind of the best things coming since we've seen Babe Ruth. Well, Babe Ruth really didn't pitch all that long, and he really wasn't that much in terms of the pitching side of things, although he did a great job, of course. So we all always give him the nod. But I'll tell you this, Ohtani's an incredible pitcher. And at the plate this year, let me ask you this. If you're that good a pitcher, are you going to lead the entire major leagues by 5 home runs, which is what he's doing? He's got 35 home runs right now, John. He's got 76 RBIs. He picked up one again last night on a triple. I mean, what he's doing every single night, not just like every couple weeks. A lot of people are saying right now that his last month might be the best month of any baseball player ever in what he was able to accomplish. And so here's what I'm going to throw out to you today, John. It's going to put us into the GM role and the financial side of things. So here's a group, the Angels. Their cap right now, or their payroll, excuse me, they don't have a cap. Their payroll is $206 million. There are many teams that are paying a lot more for their payroll than that. Mm-hmm. The Yankees and the Mets and a lot of different other teams. But $100 million of that right now is on the IR, and a big chunk of that is Trout. But then there's another gentleman on there as well, third baseman, who's another $35 million, and those two together are nearly most of what's sitting there right now on the IR. But let's just use the total of $206 million. This guy's got to get paid, and everybody keeps saying there's going to be the biggest blockbuster trade ever. But I'll ask you, John, if you're the GM and you can't figure out a way to be in LA and get the fan support and get what you need and on the road and everything else, I don't know that you can give me a blockbuster and I'm going to say, I'm not sure I want it. Right. I want Ohtani, and I think he puts, fannies in those seats. I think he has people in front of the TVs watching, and he is still a young kid who's 6'4", 220 pounds and all the rest of it. What do you think? I mean, I don't know what they'd have to put together for me to say, you know what, we'll take the deal. And it would have to be something really, really just off the charts for me, because I think he's a player like we have not seen since Babe Ruth, and I think he's at a different level than Babe Ruth.
Well, Pete, the Dodgers would be one team that obviously could go after him if indeed they consider trading this guy, which is a huge mistake, I think. But if the Dodgers got him, then who the hell are the season ticket holders for the Angels going to be? Because they all of a sudden know, well, our guys just couldn't even keep one of the best players in baseball, that even if we don't win it, we love watching him. I think that would be a huge mistake, dealing him. It's not the football equivalent of trading to somebody in your division, but it's going to hurt you at the box office, I think. Yeah. And if they trade him, period, unless they got a lot, and I don't mean money, I mean, a lot of players. If you trade him to any of these other teams like Texas, which is, should be in the running for him, I think that's a mistake, because you're just not going to have the same reason for people to go to the baseball games. And so, yeah, this is a once in a lifetime player. You hold on to him, Pete. You don't trade him.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, maybe sometime in the twilight of his career, John, he still probably would have value, and maybe you try to do something then. But I just don't see how you do it right now. I really don't. I mean, we've all seen guys play in different jerseys when they got old. This guy's young. I think it's a mistake. I mean, Joe Montana, when he did go to Kansas City from San Francisco, yes, people, he did that. But when he did that, he was damn near pushing 40. He was somewhere in his mid-30s or whatever. But, the signs were on the wall, and, it was time for Steve Young. And, that's just the way football has always been. And I think baseball, if they're not doing that, should keep track of that, because a guy this young with the talent that he's got, what he's shown not just this year, but in previous years, but specifically this year, you just have to marvel at what he's doing. And I know an injury can happen, all that kind of stuff. But I just find this guy to be just intriguing beyond words. And, just watching him run that triple last night alone, I'm just sitting there going, this guy might get an in-the-park home run on this damn thing. It's just how talented he really is.
Yeah. When you've got a pitcher that can hit in the middle of the lineup, Pete, that's scary. That's scary stuff. Well, thank you for joining us today, folks, for the Rebels Edge. We'll be back tomorrow to wind up the week with one more Rebels Edge. That's Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then.